so as an educator, my background was in intensive care nursing, and then an educator in intensive care nursing, and then an educator in adult nursing. And ultimately, I think my pedagogical approach is being fundamentally based in storytelling and the way to capture imagination and thinking skills and application skills. So today I'm going to tell you someone else's story, but it was told to me firsthand by a very, very close friend. It is as close to word for word as I can make it. I am going to read it though, because I want to make sure that I tell it accurately. And this person's identity has been altered slightly, and he's now called George. And this story is going to be the fundamental basis for our conversations today, and it will, I hope, bring about it from multiple perspectives, is my hope today. So please bear with me, and I'm going to tell you George's story. So this is George's story, part 1. My job today is telling you the story of George McMillan, a very close friend for many years. George is a retired psychiatrist and psychotherapist. He took early retirement as a 55-year-old from the NHS to fulfill a lifelong dream of developing his photography talents and determine his future as a professional photographer. George is talented and passionate, and so started this journey as a wedding photographer with an underlying desire for wedding photographs to have an oil painting quality. And he loves using his psychiatric background to calm a nervous bride and their hysterical mother, an overexcited bridesmaid, and to calm a trembling groom and an emotional father. George also has a lifelong love of good whiskey and combined these two passions by publishing his first book, a beautiful coffee table book, curating the stories of an ageing and retired workforce with the images of decaying and abandoned Scottish distilleries. The book is a testament to the evolution in modern day whiskey production in Scotland, and several books later, George is using his eclectic basket of talents to make phenomenal cheese, brew outrageous beer, walk 10 miles a day, and make the best bread ever. So this may appear to be the story of a fit, strong, and now energetic 72-year-old chap, and in lots of ways, this is the correct assumption. However, interspersed in this story is also a picture of a person trying to overcome a physical ailment that is not only physically debilitating, but is now eating into his confidence. Over the last 4 years, George has experienced paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia, which would appear at times out of the blue and at other times could be attributed to something as simple as bending over to tie his shoelaces, too much coffee, stress, tiredness, and a multitude of other tiny moments in his day. So George spent many appointments with a trusted and respected GP who suggested several treatment options and reassured him that this was not dangerous to him and he need not be concerned. This was, however, concerning. His heart rate at times in excess of 220 beats per minute. George would find himself weak, sweating, pale, unable to concentrate, and drained of energy. Lying down for the rest of the day and waiting for this to pass became an increasingly regular situation. In the summer of 2019, I was in my garden, very close to George and his wife Shona. We were having a barbecue with friends, the sun was shining, we had not at this point yet burned the sausages, and a lovely Sunday afternoon was about to unfold. Shona appeared, distressed and urgent. George had banged his head on the granite kitchen worktop, he wasn't feeling well, and would I come and assist? So I found George kneeling on the floor, blood coming from his head. He was incoherent, pale, sweating, fists clenched. George had fallen backwards and banged his head on the kitchen island, and he was now unable to communicate. So following a rapid assessment, I called an ambulance. His radial pulse was almost impalpable, and to all intents and purposes, George looked like he was about to have a cardiac arrest. George then spent 4 days in hospital. Multiple investigations later, he came home to recuperate his strength. Part 2 of George's story. As an outpatient, several months later, George attended a cardiology appointment. This appointment was generated as all other treatment had failed The wait-and-see approach was no longer suitable. Too much time was spent lying down and waiting for his heart rate to slow down. George is fit. He walks every day, stopped drinking full-strength coffee, reduced alcohol intake, did all he could to control and improve his condition and address any of the stressors that sat within his life. George is a doctor and therefore has a phenomenal understanding of physiology. He has excellent research skills. He had not consulted Dr. Google, but had spent many, many hours reading peer-reviewed journal publications. He looked and understood the statistics for treatment options and understood the national guidelines for treatment of his condition. George went on his own to the appointment. COVID restriction prevented Shona from joining him. The cardiologist that met George was polite but formal. Following a brief appraisal of George's history and current situation, the facts were given to George in these terms. Option 1, carry on as you are. Option 2, let's change medication and put up with the side effects. It might help, it might not. Option 3, a cardiac catheter ablation. These are the statistics of my success and my failure. My personal statistics of success are a 95% success rate. George, the choice is yours. Just let me know what you want to do. So the appointment lasted probably less than 10 minutes. And George said he would agree to the cardiac ablation. Facts and statistics were offered once more, and it was agreed that George would join the waiting list. George had researched who the cardiologist was and had spent time reading his publications. George told me, well, it was cold and it was a lonely appointment and I was alone in my decision. I had made my mind up before I went because of the research I had done, but I felt uncared for and I felt lonely. And that's George's story. Thank you.